She built a sanctuary for cats, but was it really a shelter or the front for a cult? This is the Sheryl Ruthven story. Hi, everyone. We're doing things a little differently today. We gave Amy the week off, much needed, but I have a very special guest host for you all today. One that some of you have heard me talk about actually quite a lot. I'll give you a hint. When people asked why I got into the field, the answer I gave was that I found inspiration from someone very close to me. And that someone is my mother, Kathy Sachs. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Meghan. How are you? I'm thrilled to be here.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited. Also, the story you're going to talk about, I haven't heard it. And I know all of them.
Do you know how hard it was to pick one that you didn't know?
I mean, last night I was listening to the Adelson trial, and I was watching Cam Court and Karen Reed, and the list goes on and on. So I'm thrilled that I don't know this one.
And just last night, you were watching about 3 crime shows, basically.
Yes.
And that's just in one night?
One night.
Okay. And half the night you spent here, so.
Yes.
So you had a really busy night.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that explains it, everyone. And just so everyone knows, what were some of the shows that I watched with you as a kid that were my favorite shows?
I think it was L.A. Law.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember distinctly on Friday nights, I used to go to Jazzercise, and I would come home at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'd lay on the couch, and Miami Vice was on, and Meghan used to brush my hair, so I would stay asleep, and she would get to watch the show.
That's so true, actually.
Yes.
I did. It was good. It worked with you every time.
Every time.
Every time. Yeah. So that's where I got my inspiration. So today's case was hard to find. It's a little bit different. And just in case you were wondering, I did say a cat cult. Like meow, like a cat cult. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
The only thing that I could think of is people that were pretending they were cats.
Oh. Oh, I understand what you're saying. Okay.
It's
not exactly that, but this case came from our case suggestion list. So someone had said, "Hey, you might want to check this out. It's not really mainstream yet, but I have to say, when I did a little research, and there's very little on it, but I'll cite my sources at the end. There is one episode of a docuseries. I believe it's The Curious Case of. Again, I'll cite it at the end." But before I go on and on, Mom, I'm just going to introduce you to the woman at the center of the Doomsday cat cult.
Oh, this sounds great.
Right? I knew you'd
love it.
I know. Okay, Cheryl Snow grew up in Priest Lake, Idaho in the 1970s, attending community church with her family. The family moved to Spokane when Cheryl was a child, and both she and her brother attended a Seventh-day Adventist school, where she graduated in the early 1980s, just to give you an idea of the timeline here. She then attended a university for a short period before she met Mark Walker, and that was in 1984. So Mark's also going to be pivotal to this story. How they met? Well, Cheryl was working in Nordstrom, I think as a sales lady, and Mark's mother was shopping there. She then goes home. Tell me if this doesn't sound like something one of us would do. She then goes home and says, "You have to go to Nordstrom and meet this beautiful, striking blonde. You're going to fall in love with her," basically. So he does. He goes back to Nordstrom and says she's like the most striking woman. You can see she's tall, blonde, kind of buxom, attractive woman. Essentially, they start dating after that, and they married in 1985 after a whirlwind romance of just 6 months. So that's a little bit quick. Now, they had a child shortly after, followed by 2 others. So they had 1 daughter and 2 sons. Though Cheryl was a present mother, Mark said that the marriage, it was over just as soon as it started. And he didn't really say why. I just got the idea that it was too quick and they didn't know each other, but he also didn't believe in divorce. He was religious and he believed you stay for the children. He was a Christian, and Cheryl did not seem interested at all in religion, according to Mark, for a lot of years. Nonetheless, Sheryl found a female preacher who led the Gates of Praise, a Pentecostal church. And this seemed to pique her interest.
Of course, Pentecostal. It piqued my interest, too.
Why? Is that like fun?
Because they're very loud and boisterous.
Okay.
They will dance in the aisles like a Baptist church.
Oh, okay.
They speak tongues. It's very moving if you go.
So she was inspired by that. The preacher at that church, Debbie Lynch, was very, as you would say, charismatic, and Sheryl became very close with her very quickly. And according to her husband, maybe a little too close, just what he said. In fact, Sheryl became an associate pastor very quickly. And she didn't have a background, but she fell in love with the position. She liked being the center of attention. Now, she loved the position, and despite the fact that she really didn't have any training or background or education, in 2001, she established her own church called the Freedom Fire Ministries. So she parted ways with Debbie because she apparently wanted to be the star of her own show. She didn't have, as I said, training, but she seemed to have the power of persuasion. And what she persuaded people was that she was a prophet. Sheryl was charismatic. She was she was a star, you might say. And a lot of people will recount that, that there was no disbelieving Sheryl. Everything she said, it was like God was saying it. So she was based out of Bellingham, Washington for a long time. Now, her husband, they were together when she started her ministry, but he said when he saw what she was teaching, he wasn't buying it, he wasn't following it, and they weren't exactly getting along very well. So it wouldn't be a surprise that shortly after Sheryl established her own congregation, they divorced. Some reported that Sheryl kind of expected Mark to fall in line, but Mark said he didn't subscribe to anything she was teaching.
What about the kids?
Well, the kids were very much with Sheryl, let's put it this way.
Oh, they were?
They were very much with her, but let me describe what happened. Tensions really escalated, and according to Mark, Sheryl called the police on him and reported that he pushed her, for which he was arrested and spent a night in jail. Now, Mark says he never touched her, and in fact, the charges were dropped, like almost immediately, because there was no proof of it. But the divorce initiated by Mark followed very quickly after, because he said that was it for him. He was done. And while Mark fought for shared custody, it seemed that the kids were taking their mom's side. He did get pretty much even custody. And I think that incensed Sheryl. But he said that he thought the best thing he could do was be a great dad, be very nice, never say a bad word against Sheryl, because that's what he thought was best for his children.
That's what a good parent would do.
Well, apparently that's not really what was happening. Sheryl was poisoning the children and turning them against Mark. And it wasn't just the children she was poisoning. So you might say, or some might say, if this is all according to Mark, then maybe he's just a disgruntled ex. But he had a lot of people, or not a lot of support, I should say, but a lot of people who spoke to the documentarian makers who told them what Sheryl was saying about Mark, and it was really bad. She was basically had, these hundreds of followers, and she was telling them that Mark was evil, that he was an evil entity, that he was demonic. Sheryl was also, she was a doomsday preacher, if you will.
That's what gets them.
Right? It's the doomsday, right?
Because they think it's going to happen real soon, and they're going to be with God, So do
you think it's fear-based or faith-based?
Oh, I think it's
Doomsday.
fear-based and faith-based, because they're saying, I don't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a fear. So I'm going to do what this prophet is telling me to do.
Yeah. Okay. So her followers were devout. They never questioned her preachings or authority. And according to some, Sheryl would cut down anyone who did question her. And that's why people didn't. She would cut them down to size, humiliation, bullying, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, Mark actually met someone and remarried. which was an exciting time. His wife, Mary, said they thought it was going to be this great experience, like this new blended family that they were going to have together. She was bringing kids in. He was bringing kids in. They were pretty excited. But Sheryl wasn't really about to let that happen, despite the fact that she quickly remarried, and it was to a congregant's husband or ex-husband after Sheryl intervened and convinced the two to divorce. So she intervened in their marriage, two of her congregants.
You know, it's funny you say this because this happens in a lot of churches.
What do you mean?
Well, I know a pastor, and he divorced his wife of 30 years and married the secretary. And she was getting a divorce. And you hear about this in churches, like a pastor becoming involved with a woman in his church. So it does happen. It's not a shock.
It's not a shock, but it's not the norm.
No.
I mean, I would hope it's not the norm, because this was, I thought, really disturbing to hear. And also, according to members of her church, even though she remarried, she still hated Mark, like with a passion. Her followers also began to share this vision that Mark had to die because he was a threat. He was a demonic, satanic threat. So, I mean, and this kind of doesn't make total sense if you think about it, because they had shared custody. They both went on their ways. But I guess Sheryl just it seemed like she wanted everything for herself. The kids, custody, and the relationship with her new husband actually fizzled pretty quickly as well, with Pete reportedly moving out after just a few months. But Sheryl was good at meeting men as well, and in 2008, she met a new man by the name of Rick Madrid. He was a new congregant, and Sheryl pursued him vigorously and romantically, obviously. And they married pretty quickly. However, it wasn't really legal since Sheryl never divorced Pete. So they had this quasi-legal union that was them to be. But apparently, I think like Pete and his ex-wife still were followers of Sheryl. She'd still convinced them to pledge money. He supported her financially, even though she kicked him out of the house. She went on to meet someone else, moved in with someone else, but Pete was still supporting her. So this becomes really interesting to me. But soon Sheryl wanted her new husband, Rick, to take care of her spiritual problem. Her spiritual problem was
Mark,
right. So one day after they married, Rick went to Mark's house and stood outside the house with a rifle, having Mark in his sights and about to shoot. But at the last minute, just before he went to pull the trigger, he says he stopped and realized, what am I doing? He changed his mind and he left without Mark even knowing that he literally had the rifle sights on his face. According to Rick, when he went home to tell Sheryl what happened, she kicked him out of the house immediately.
He didn't follow her.
Nope. Rick said he was relieved that God had intervened and saved him from making the hugest mistake of his life. And he said he told Sheryl that. Well, if I was supposed to do this, then why did God step in and stop me from doing it? Wasn't that good? I was like, I heard this too, and I was going, oh no. But he stopped.
Well, she's thinking of herself as a prophet, as God.
Yeah.
So, and she's probably thinking, I didn't ask you to stop. I asked you to do this.
Right.
So,
if you didn't do what Sheryl wanted, apparently it was a problem. Now, Rick, he was lucky, but he fell prey to Sheryl, but he wasn't the only one to fall prey to Sheryl's manipulation. According to another member of the church, a woman named Mary Lancaster, she had grown up in a deeply religious home in Christianity, but she knew early on that she was gay, and she was forced to keep it, or she felt she was forced to keep it a secret. I mean, it was a very rough childhood for her. She said there were many sad and hard days as a teenager because of this, and you can imagine. She channeled her energy into music, learning to play the piano in her teens, and in 2004, at 27 years old and still unsure of where she fit in, she found Sheryl's church through a flyer at Walmart. So she went to the church because, remember, she didn't feel that she had a place in Christianity especially. And she said that immediately when she went to the church, she was taken with Sheryl and was taken with the church, the atmosphere. And I think, as you said, like, it seemed more fun, more accepting, like, you know, it wasn't strict, or I guess it's strict in the way that she had been raised. So Mary said that she felt Sheryl understood her and she had finally found the place where she was going to be accepted. She became a worship leader. And she set up a recording studio to record music for Sheryl and for the church.
How fast?
Very fast. That's very quick.
Okay, good.
Well, I don't know if you'd say good, but no, good that you got what's going on. Sheryl praised her piano playing, telling her that her music could heal other people. Soon enough, Mary invited her younger sister, Rachel, to attend Sheryl's church, and Rachel also became an enthusiastic member. And this was around 2004, 2005, just for a time frame. Sheryl had the devotion of both sisters, but in particular, Mary. And one night, Sheryl invited Mary to meet her at the church. And according to Mary, it was just the two of them. And at this point, Sheryl suggested that the two of them should go into covenant, doing the work of the Lord together, and they should seal the union with a kiss. So the two kissed to seal this new union, Mary believing now that the two were going to be a couple. And this is odd because Sheryl actually preached against homosexuality in the church. But in fact, according to Mary, they did become a couple and became secretly intimate with one another. This was their secret covenant. Right.
The power of persuasion.
Right? Okay. So Mary said that she knew this was wrong. Like, she knew it was wrong to be in this relationship. She loved Sheryl. She fell in love. She knew it was wrong because it was hypocritical, because Sheryl wouldn't tell anyone, and she was preaching against this. And how could she be preaching against this in one, word, but kissing her in another moment, kind of thing? But the love didn't last long. It did for Rachel, but Sheryl entered the relationship after just a few months, breaking Mary's heart. I think I said Rachel, but I meant Mary.
Did.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry. I meant Mary, so I want to keep that clear. I don't know why Sheryl ended the relationship, and I'm not really sure Mary did either. Mary said she almost felt like, I think Sheryl had gotten what she wanted from her. Like, Mary was doing the church and doing all the things that Sheryl had proposed she did, and then moved on, but she was still not sure. And Mary said she was absolutely devastated, but she was still a devout follower of Sheryl, so she stayed with her. Now, her sister Rachel, I don't think, knew anything about this either, so Rachel was still a follower as well. Mary and Rick are just two examples of how Sheryl gained compliance over followers and in turn the power. And Sheryl was gaining power, it seemed, expanding the church, but things were about to get very strange.
How strange.
What began with a lot of Catholic mysticism and spiritual rituals by Sheryl morphed into very eclectic and varied beliefs. For example, Sheryl halted the celebrations of Christian holidays inexplicably and instead implemented celebration of Jewish holidays. But she also then included teachings about Buddhism and Egyptian gods and chakra and paganism. People said that they just kind of didn't know where Sheryl was going and what was happening, but you didn't question Sheryl. In fact, members would bow to her, literally bow to her in the congregation.
What was the name of her church?
Freedom Fire Ministries. However, she did change it a few times. It's
sounding a little familiar to me now.
No way.
She's on a bed with a lot of cats. I saw something similar. I think.
I don't know. It's in my best friend, a case we've never heard of, but it's like impossible true crime, Mom. All right.
Oh, it's interesting. Very interesting. I love it.
It is. Okay. Sheryl was not to be questioned. As I said, people bow to her. She was not to be questioned, and things get even weirder. The ministry went on like group outings, and after they went to see the movie, The Da Vinci Code, remember The Da Vinci Code?
I never saw it.
Really? So good with Tom Hanks?
Never saw it.
I really liked it. I thought it was really good. But basically, after that movie, Sheryl began to preach that she, in fact, was once Mary Magdalene, who, who was the devoted follower of Jesus and was first to see his resurrection historically. So Sheryl was now her and letting everyone in the church know that she would be referred to as Mary or the prophet, but she was Mary Magdalene in a former life. Some would say that Mary and Sheryl was actually the wife of Jesus. And that's the way the preaching were coming across. At communion, Sheryl would now cut her hand and drip her blood into the wine from which, not the wine, I guess it was juice, grape juice, right?
Yes.
From which everyone would drink because she was representative of Jesus, the female version, and her followers should drink from her blood now directly. And many people attested to this.
And what about the followers? Were they questioning this?
Yes, but no, I think everyone was afraid to question it. If you questioned Sheryl, she would berate you, humiliate you, and then, and I'll explain this in a bit, she would get others to turn against you. So you were persecuted if you questioned her.
Okay.
Can you imagine you or me drinking someone else's blood?
No, I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure
don't
you'd be like, F this. This is where religion stops. Okay. So things were a little strange, but then they took the weirdest turn.
Weirder?
Well, in 2009, Sheryl began preaching about the cats. Remember I said cat cult in the beginning? The preach was this: by saving the cats, the congregants would save themselves.
Oh, my God.
Wait, you haven't heard it all. The church took a radical transformation, becoming Eva's Eden, and this was a cage-free cat shelter. They had gone by other names, as I told you, after Freedom Fire Ministries, but now they were a cat refuge. They were a nonprofit organization, and the members of the church would take cats home that might have been put to sleep at other shelters or on the streets, let's say, and they would foster them for a while, and then they would place them at Eva's Eden for adoption, where the public could come meet them and adopt them. Sheryl demanded that every member foster cats, okay? But this was not just fostering. They had to make the cats the number one priority in the home above all other responsibilities. So they had to feed the cats before they fed their kids or themselves. Now get this also. It wasn't just that they had to take a cat or two. Sheryl demanded that they take, most people had upwards of 20 cats in their house.
God.
Some had up to 50 reportedly. Cats in their one home. Can you imagine the stress of having that many cats? Do you remember the one cat you had? How stressed you were?
Yes.
I mean, in fairness, your cat used to torture you. I've never seen a cat torture, when she used to run out and you'd have to run down the hallway limping after her
right,
when you hurt your ankle. I mean, she was a lot. Now imagine having 20 of those.
No.
Okay.
I mean, what about the litter boxes?
So, I mean, people are explaining the stress of their houses, like how bad they smelled, how gross they were. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the documentary, one woman discusses like social services coming in because they were concerned about like it being a safe and healthy environment for the family, having this many cats in the house. And if they refused, Sheryl would humiliate them or she would exile them from the church. So everyone had to take the cats. You had no choice if you were part of
How
the church.
long did they have to take the cats for?
Until they were ready to be adopted. But even if they gave the cats over, they had to take more. So like it was an ongoing operation. People in this documentary talk about the stress of having this many cats and having to place them all above like everything. One woman says, I had waited years to take my kids on a vacation. I took them on a vacation. Sheryl called me back and said one of my cats was unwell and I had to come back. My kids were devastated. It was the first time we'd let her like left the house.
Wow.
And she went back. But you haven't asked me why the cats? Why would the cats save them? Like, why did she think the cats?
I have no idea. I haven't got a clue.
She said that the cats would save the 144,000 people as discussed in the book of Revelation. I'm sure you've heard this before.
Yes.
So the saints would use the cats as a vessel for the 144,000 that would save the rest of society, but also would save these church members because they would take care of the cats. This was Sheryl's prophecy, and this is why they had to take care of the cats.
I don't know what to say.
I don't think there's
I've heard a lot of wacky things, but this, I really don't know what to say.
I knew it.
And the 144,000, I think that was the chosen Jews.
It's the chosen cats.
Oh,
I mean, okay.
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 I'm sorry, a little confused.
Yeah. This wasn't completely out of the blue, like, though, because people were going, well, why cats? So Sheryl had a cat named Eva. Eva's Eden, I said, who died. And following her death, she was very distraught, as reported in one story. And it was the loss of this cat and how distraught she was that she took as a sign about founding Eva's Eden. And this is how she described it. I want to read you a direct quote, okay? She died on the winter solstice. She wrote, "Death had come. Now I needed to embrace life. How does one explain such a love to a world that sees animals only as animals? As I had studied and taught my people that of Egyptian alchemy, I grew up in reverence for their beliefs of honoring the felines as vessels that are able to guide us through our passageway of life." According to one former member of the church, she went from being a woman of God to a nutcase. I thought that was...
And I just wonder how many people were still following her.
Okay.
Was there a point where they went, no more?
Okay, so some people did, but I have to tell you, she still retained a lot of her followers. There were a couple that cracked with the cats. Like they just, they couldn't do it. And even as I'm laughing, I realized it was really stressful to them. They said that, yeah, they just couldn't keep up. The pressure was too much. According to one former member of the church, though, Sheryl was very smart about using other church members to police each other. So if someone didn't abide by the rules, they would be subject to public humiliation and ridicule. She was according to, sources, very manipulative, was able to get the group to consent and ostracize you if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, even having check-ins on people at their homes to make sure they were feeding the cats first.
I wonder what her life was like when she was growing up, what her parents would think of all of this.
It was interesting because this is one of those cases, most time when I handle cases, I can get a ton of resources. But this one, very little I could find about her childhood. It did seem like she grew up in a religious home, but I didn't read anything that was abnormal or off, which does not mean, anything. It doesn't mean that her parents weren't perfectly lovely and she just didn't. We'll explain what happened at the end. But it is hard to explain exactly how this happened when you don't have all the details of someone's background. The more we know about someone's background, the more it helps us in criminology to explain it, as you probably know. I think about how stressful it was for all these cats, or all the humans to prioritize the cats. But the cats did take priority in the homes. However, Sheryl wanted more than just obedience and more than just people to take care of the cats. It seemed like, and you probably could see this coming, there was also a financial angle with Sheryl. Ah, you didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't.
Surprise. Okay.
Did not.
Okay, well, this is nothing according to any court documents. This is everything that's been reported through articles and sources that I'll reveal at the end. But let me just start by saying, according to her ex-husband, Mark, Sheryl made out pretty well financially from their divorce. She was awarded a total of $750,000 after working as a stay-at-home mom. And let me just say, I now say working as a stay-at-home mom because I understand how hard it is to work as a stay-at-home mom. But preaching then became her job, her income. And of course, there is usually also a financial donation portion to every church.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
you're
churches are
supposed
nonprofit.
to tithe 10%.
Tithe 10%, exactly. So you can't always tithe 10%, but
no,
you do support the church, and that's a way for the church and the pastors and staff, other people to be paid. So it's not uncommon, and there's no problem with that. But Sheryl also solicited donations that were more aggressive. According to Mary, remember who she shared the covenant, Sheryl was very pushy about the donations, and she asked for more. And it seemed that a lot of these donations now were subsidizing her lifestyle and not the church. So families were giving huge amounts towards the church, but also towards the cats. So these families, there were adoption fees for the cats and then all the other food and necessities for the cats. Sheryl had everyone purchase all of that through her. So they paid her fostering, adoption fees. They paid, she got the food and they bought the food and all supplies through her.
Wow.
in addition to all of the tithing that they had. And during this time, Sheryl was upgrading her physical looks, getting plastic surgery, and she also took very elaborate vacations. So she was now going to Italy as a regular trip a couple of times, and she had taken a couple of congregants, but it was, as one congregant's husband or ex-husband described, he had to pay for the trip for his wife and children and Sheryl to go to Italy because it was a spiritual trip.
Oh.
So she was, her lifestyle was becoming much better. It wasn't just going towards her modest home, which is usually the case with pastors. Then there was another spiritual trip that she wanted to go to Scotland. It was going to be very costly. And in this case, I know that one of the members' husbands just refused and said, no, like this has just gone too far. And at this point, I think questions really began to arise about Sheryl's motives and her teachings. Her financial demands had really become, according to members, excessive. And now with the cats, I mean, I know you're laughing. It's the cats. So around 2012, Sheryl began to plan her exodus. Sheryl was leaving for Tennessee as she basically proclaimed the end was coming near. And she wanted to purchase enough farmland to live off when the end of society occurred. So, when the Doomsday happened, she was going to have a big plot of land, and it would be for her and her followers. So she invited her congregation to follow her to Tennessee. And a lot of them did. Even with the cats. They took their cats and they went.
Now, when Doomsday comes, she should be going to heaven, not staying here.
Oh, is that the case?
Yeah. She's preaching about going to heaven, and yet she's buying land that she could stay on if she doesn't get taken.
Well, Doomsday, but there are people who survive Doomsday, so I think she's a survivor.
Yes, but when Doomsday happens, Christians will go up to heaven and be with God.
Okay.
And the ones that didn't believe will be still on earth. And so she's preparing a farm where I thought she was going to go to heaven.
Well, I don't think that's
None of this makes any sense to me.
Well, since I'm not religious, and you know that, I really don't know that much. I do know it appeared that Sheryl believed that her and her followers were going to be Doomsday. They were going to be here on Earth. They would be saved, but I guess here on Earth. But remember also, Sheryl had very different and eclectic, like a mix of preachings. They didn't all align with any one religion. They were all mixed in. So maybe she believed that certain people would be saved and go to heaven. And maybe she believed eventually they would, but they would survive here. I don't really know the full extent. I do know the cats were going to save them. Okay. In 2013, this is sad though, Sheryl left with her children, leaving Mark behind. And what's sad about this is she left when her daughter turned 18. And according to Mark, it was in fact the very day she turned 18. Which was allowable per the custody agreement. So their custody agreement kept the kids there until the daughter turned 18. And Mark describes he had made plans with his daughter to meet her, and he went to the house and they were gone. No one left a word. He had no idea. They were just out of there. The daughter didn't tell him. I mean, he describes that he had been losing his kids for a long time, but this was the end where they physically left him. It was very sad hearing him describe this. Sheryl and her family and her followers went to Columbia, Tennessee. Sheryl took a lot of the members with her. About 50 people followed her. So, that's, I think, about a quarter, maybe more of her members. I think she had something like 200. She did buy a 42-acre property, and she relocated a lot of her cats. I don't know how many cats she had, though. So I never heard anyone say, how many cats did she... Wouldn't it be funny if she had one cat or two cats? All right. A lot of people left, and sadly, not a lot, but some families broke up because of this, because it appeared that the wives and children went with Sheryl, but the husband stayed behind. It appeared that Sheryl broke up had a way of intervening in marriages and breaking up the families, especially when the husband no longer wanted to cooperate with the financial obligations.
Because he might be working and it's his money going towards the cats.
towards the cats, the trips, and everything.
Oh.
So, literally families divided because of Sheryl, but not everyone who went was staying. Mary's sister, Rachel, remember Mary and Rachel?
Yes.
She met someone and began to date him, but he wasn't affiliated with the church, and this was a major violation, according to Sheryl. She was basically in major trouble. Her punishment was to be excommunicated from the church, and the person to deliver that message to her was her sister. So Sheryl excommunicated Rachel and made Mary tell her. And because they were both afraid of Sheryl, Mary did just that. But this is particularly crushing because they were both planning this move to Tennessee. So all of them were going to be together. Rachel begged for forgiveness, but Sheryl would not grant her forgiveness. But get this, she wouldn't allow her back into the church, but she still expected her to serve the church, to foster the cats. I'm not even kidding. So while being shunned by everyone, she was supposed to take care of these cats. Rachel still moved to Tennessee, but her relationship with her sister, Mary, suffered greatly. The two barely were speaking as, Mary was still devoted to Sheryl. So they both moved to Tennessee, but one's excommunicated. They're not close as sisters anymore. I mean, think about how broken this is. We laugh about the cats because, right? But she broke these families and she broke a lot of people's hearts if these allegations are true. However, their devotion would also change. Mary was unhappy in Tennessee, and she really began, she said, to recognize the damage that Sheryl had caused. She saw it. I think she saw her broken sister. She saw herself as broken, what she had put into the church and what she was not receiving back. And I think something clicked with her then. She met someone. She met a woman online. She began to date her, which was probably a violation of Sheryl's rules. But she said that it was this person who began to help her see what a life outside of this church would look like, what a normal life would look like. And she began to reconnect as well with her sister, which she said took a lot of strength. She wound up telling her sister the whole truth, everything that happened with Sheryl. These two didn't know what was going on. And this was a pivotal point for them, a pivotal point where they began to mend their own relationship by being honest. Yeah, I know. This was actually a nice part. Of course, Sheryl tried to convince Mary to stay, love bombing her. Again, you've heard of the love bombing thing.
Oh, yes, I know that.
Right. Okay. So love bombing her, but this time it didn't work. Mary left. And in fact, Mary married in 2015. And she healed her relationship with Rachel, noting that even though she healed, she still has a hard time trusting people here.
Sure.
Both sisters escaped and began anew, essentially. All right, what about Mark's family? Well, Mark's wife, Mary, began a Facebook page about the possibility of a cat cult under Sheryl's control. And a journalist picked up on the story and published an article on this in 2016. So that's one of the sources that I used here. And then the podcast, The Opportunist, published a 4-part series on Sheryl in which Rick Madrid, remember the husband who decided not to pull the trigger, he spoke freely about his involvement in this plot to kill Mark. So he spoke on this podcast. It was a bombshell and probably could have led to a legal case against Sheryl, but unfortunately, Rick passed away a few years ago, so he could not provide further information should law enforcement or anyone in the or the police or the legal world want to pursue this. He died of unknown causes, and some find the circumstances suspicious, though not much is known otherwise, and this is probably just speculation and fodder. According to Mary Walker, and this was Mark's wife, his second wife, she had felt really bad about it because Rick turned out to be an ally. She said he turned out to be a friend, telling the truth, apologizing, making amends, saying that he would do whatever to help her. So she felt bad. But according to Mary, she spoke to Rick's brother after he died, and what he revealed was even more shocking, or another surprise. It wasn't just Mark that Sheryl wanted to die. It was also Mary and her children that she wanted dead as well.
What kind of a person is this? And they didn't they didn't hurt her, Mary and the kids.
No.
Not that that would be a reason, but they didn't hurt her.
From what I know, there was nothing.
Evil.
Sheryl and her followers claim that Eva's Eden is a refuge for cats and that they have done nothing wrong. They've become the target, they say, of disgruntled ex-members of the church and subjected to unwarranted online harassment by Mary Walker and others. And of course, as I said, there's no way to substantiate. This is what one side reports. And granted, there were a lot of people reporting it, but that's their claim.
Is she still alive?
Today, Sheryl lives in Kentucky with her family. I believe she's in her early 60s now. All 3 children went with her. Sheryl founded a new animal rescue, Da Vinci's Dream, which includes both cats and dogs. So, are they real or are they a front for criminal activity? I don't know. Mark hasn't spoken to his children since 2013, the day that they left. And I think that's a real tragedy here.
It is.
It really is. And I think that, well, I'll tell you in a second. But Rachel and Mary both left. As I said, they created new families and they mended their own relationship. Mary has a cat, but not 17 anymore. According to Mark, after Mary told her story, a lot of former cult members left Sheryl, and he's telling his story not because he really wants to or because he wanted to be on some documentary, because it's his hope that other people will see this and realize the damage that's been done, and if they meet her or become part of an organization, to walk away. And that's really his hope. To date, from what I could find, though, let me be clear, Sheryl has not been charged with any crimes. That's where we are today.
I really want to Google her. I want to Google Mark. I want to Google the kids. I want to see how the kids are.
Yeah. You're going to want to watch this document. The documentary is like an hour and 15 minutes. You're definitely going to want to watch it.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So now, last night, you spent your night on 3 different crime stories.
Yes.
Tonight,
yes.
After we have dinner, do you think you're going to like them?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and Google this. Okay.
I'm going to go, I think tonight, Court TV.
Okay. But it's not going to be on Court TV, though, just so you know, this one.
No, I know, but there'll be one. Something I can watch.
You have to watch Diddy coverage, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have to watch that. It's funny.
We're not done, by the way, but go ahead.
It's funny because my boyfriend said to me, so what are you going to do after the Karen Reed trial? I go, Sean Combs. There's always a trial. There's always something.
I was just saying it, too. While there's always a trial, the last, year or two and the upcoming year or two have been off-the-chart trials for true crime. I mean, like nothing I've been a part of, and since I've been in this community for over 20 years, the last couple of years, the trials have been unbelievable. The magnitude of these high-profile cases, and there's Brian Koberger coming up, Rex Heuermann. I mean, Lori Vallow was just convicted again. It's I've never seen anything like this converge. So later on when we're going back as criminologists and talking about trends, what was going on from these years, Did it have anything to do with COVID? Who knows?
And it's all over the place. If you don't see it on TV, you go home, you watch it on your computer, your phone, whatever it is. You can always keep up with it.
And granted, you could always not. So like you said, it's all over the place when you look it up on your phone, on your computer, when you're always literally.
Yes.
I think I told you about this the one time James turned on the TV and he went, oh, look, we have other channels besides Investigative Discovery. I was like,
there's more now, too. I don't know if you know about it. There's Mean Girls, Toxic. There are so many crime shows.
I was on Mean Girls. I did a couple episodes of Mean Girls. Mean Girl Murders?
Yes.
Yeah, well, look back because I did 2 episodes.
Well, I have a couple saved.
Okay. Hopefully you'll see me.
Okay.
All right. So now that we know what happened, or at least we know the majority of what we could find, I like to end by explaining why this happened. So I think in this part, in the last part of our show here, I want to talk about cults. Cults in the United States have have historical roots, often emerging from religious and social movements that, seek to create utopian societies separate from mainstream because they don't like what's going on in mainstream society. So in particular, the 1960s and 1970s were a turbulent time in the U.S., as most people know, marked by opposition to Vietnam War, widespread opposition. The country was divided. You'll be able to talk more about that. There was, civil rights. I think a fundamental distrust of the government at that time would be fair to say, more so than many other eras. So there was a rise in these alternative spiritual movements, a rise in communal living experiments, right? Groups that rejected mainstream society, the counterculture, right?
Absolutely.
Weren't you kind of all right, you were a hippie. Let's just say it, right?
I was a hippie, but I was a clean hippie.
What the hell does that mean?
That means that I still slept in my bed at night and took a shower every day.
So you just
I wasn't going all out.
So basically,
for
you
it.
just had the long hair piece and like bell bottoms.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. And there were a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of young people went into these communes, because the drugs, the way it worked on their minds.
Yeah.
And they saw their friend going and somebody else, and maybe they were happy. So,
well, unfortunately, cults had existed before, but I think the social upheaval of the 1970s created a fertile ground for their growth. Now, some turned to these charismatic leaders who promised enlightenment, salvation, or revolutionary change. Now, that was possible because of the divide in society as well. You didn't have the mainstream subscribing to everything the government was saying. The country was sort of at odds a little bit. Groups like the People's Temple, I don't know if you remember them, led by Jim Jones.
I remember that.
The Children of God. They gained traction during this time, and they offered a new sense of community, a different sense of community. The people who sought out these types of community, or people who seek out these types of community, can be vulnerable types, maybe feeling that they're missing something in society, or they just don't fit in with mainstream society, or they're just upset with what's going on. When we talk about Mary, she just couldn't find a place to fit in. She was kind of vulnerable. And I feel like cult leaders are very good at seeking out vulnerable types. So the problem becomes some of the cult leaders. And that's not to say, by the way, that every cult is bad. I think there are alternative cult communal living arrangements in which people are equal, or there's a structure that doesn't take advantage. Unfortunately, because of what I do, I see the worst side of cults. And I think that there are cult leaders who are often very exploitative. They exploit vulnerabilities. They use manipulation, control to maintain power. Many cult leaders exhibit serious traits of narcissism and antisocial personalities. I don't think Sheryl is any different.
No.
They use psychological tactics such as love bombing and praise. So at first they do this to gain all of your affection, right? To win you over.
Yes.
But then they use information deception to basically manipulate followers into isolation. When I say information deception, they'll say things about maybe families and society that are negative and bad, but in our circle, you'll find something different. So they're gaining this isolation, gaining control, and then they create this intense peer pressure to conform to the group. Right? Like in Sheryl's case, she would love bomb them, like from the start, but then she would isolate them, and then she would create a pressure, and then she would use them to police each other. It's a really horrible cycle.
What's going through my mind is Charles Manson.
Ah, yeah.
Absolutely, because that's what he did. And they followed him.
Yeah.
And they did whatever he wanted.
Whatever he said.
It was terrible.
I think it's very hard for maybe the average person to understand that. It's almost like, people go, well, how could someone falsely confess? Well, you don't understand the enormous pressure of a vulnerable person,
yes.
Especially when they want to please someone. And it almost becomes, I can almost liken some of what happens in a cult to that kind of pressure.
Yes.
The consequences, though, again, it was funny about the cats and the, whatever, but the consequences to some of these people are devastating. They can include physical injury, mental health issue, broken relationships, financial and economic devastation and instability. There are people who give their whole life savings over to cults, trouble reintegrating back into society, and sometimes death. There can be suicide that follows these things. And as we know, we've seen cults that have had mass suicides. I mean,
yes,
it could be very extreme. This is really just, by the way, briefly touching on cults. We actually did, if you're looking for anyone who's listening today wants to do a deeper dive, we did an episode with a cult member, Daniela Mistayanek. She was raised in a cult, and we had a two-parter. The actual number escapes me. I should have written it down, so I apologize. But she describes what it was like to be raised in a cult. And I mean, it's chilling. It is harrowing. What the relationship was like with her mother, the abuse, how she got out, how she escaped. So I'm just giving you like a very skim, but if you're interested truly in understanding what it's like, I mean, her account of it and her book, they will blow your mind. So, okay.
Well, that's something else I have to look up after this.
Oh, you're gonna want to hear what she has to say. So, in this case that we discussed today, it sounds like members experienced a lot of what's typical, unfortunately, of exploitative cult members. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add today, Mom?
No, I think I'm good. I think I want to look up the last person you talked about.
Daniela.
Yeah, I want to look that up. And
well, I know you're going to be
cults.
Googling Sheryl Ruthven, too.
Yes, and the cults, if you're standing outside and you're looking in, it's like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
What's the draw?
Yeah.
What are they getting from it? But then when they're in it, they think they're getting something from it.
Oh,
I think a lot of it has to do with they're getting some love, some support, family, all live together. So I think that's the draw for some people.
I think that's a draw for a lot of people.
Yes.
Love, solidarity. It's almost like a gang. You can liken it, people who don't understand why you join a gang because you have no family. You feel a family bond. There's protection. There's numbers, there. And again, when you have a charismatic leader who love bombs you and convinces you to come here, you're surrounded by people who love you. It's really hard to resist.
It is.
I mean, it's really a shame. I don't know what's going to happen here today with Sheryl Ruthven. It might be, that with the article and media exposure of her tactics, which very much mimic others covered in the literature on cults, that maybe some of the worst types of or further types of abuse of people can be prevented, maybe just by even sharing this information.
I agree.
I mean, that remains to be seen, but I have to tell you, we'll sure be watching.
Thank you, Meghan.
Thank you, Mom, for being here with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
It was fun, right?
Yes, it was. That was a good story, too. I'm sorry, not a story. That was good.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, for people, actually, before we leave today, so we often take questions from our patrons or our supporters. So I'll just say before we go out today, we do have a question. And the question is a complicated one. It seems easy, but it's actually quite complicated. Someone wrote in and asked, why do women kill their children?
I think some women kill their children because they're postmenopause. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. After you have a baby.
You mean postpartum?
Postpartum.
So you mean postpartum psychosis?
Yes. And then I think some women do it because they don't really love their child, and their child is in the way of something that they want, whether it's a job, a man.
It's usually a man. Diane Downs.
Yes. Susan Smith.
Yep, Susan Smith. You named two of the reasons. So there's actually, when I teach Women&Crime in this, there's about 8 different categories, and even those categories don't sum it up. But you mentioned 2 of them. Other reasons include accidental death because of either neglect or abuse for people who are frustrated and don't know how to parent, or women who have trouble parenting. Another reason is that some kill at the behest of a partner, a male partner, which Oftentimes, there's a lack of sympathy for these women, understandably, because we're supposed to, right? We're supposed to protect our children. However, a lot of times those women are highly abused as well and are afraid themselves. It's a very complicated dynamic. Then there are the people so the killing of one's child also, I might say, is filicide. But when you kill a newborn, it's called neonaticide. And that becomes different too. So usually women who kill newborn infants are the women who denied their pregnancy, didn't want to believe it, and when it happens, they seek to get rid of the child right away. So we've read a number of those stories, like the young mothers who deliver at the prom or at their home. We covered a case like that as well. So there are any number of reasons. And then sometimes there's a mixture. Like you have Andrea Yates. She had postpartum psychosis.
That was the one from Texas?
Who drowned her children.
5 of them.
5 of them. And people were, of course.
At first, yes. But if you
what you came to understand
yes.
was that she had postpartum psychosis, and it's another reason we call altruistic murder, which means her psychosis led her to believe that her children were inhabited by the devil, and the only way she could save them, because she was so religious, the only way she could save their souls and they go to heaven is if she killed them by getting rid of the devil. And she really believed that, it's hard for people to understand that. Regardless, it is a very tough question, and there's definitely a lot more to it. I hope I touched on some of it. It's a hard phenomenon to deal with, especially in Women in Crime, especially as a mother myself now. Thank you for that question. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. If you're interested in asking a question, our patrons are guaranteed to have questions read on air. If you want to join us on Patreon, we have other perks like our happy hours, lectures, book clubs, lots of fun things. We just did a quiz giveaway too. So feel free to check us out on Patreon. For everyone else, thank you, and we'll catch you next time on Women and Crime.
Women in Crime is written and hosted by Meghan Sachs and Amy Shlosberg. Our producer is James Varga. Script editing is by Abagail Belcastro. Audio editing is by Siler Burr and Jose Alfonso. And music is by Desert Media. If you enjoy the show, please remember to follow and leave a review. You can also support the show through Patreon, where you can get access to additional ad-free content such as exclusive full-length episodes, lectures, a book club, and virtual happy hours with Meghan and Amy. For more information, visit patreon.com/womenandcrime.
Sources for today's episode include an episode of The Curious Case of the Doomsday Cat Cult, the NashvilleScene.com, the podcast The Opportunist, and Psychology Today.